All right, let's dive into something pretty fascinating, maybe even a bit unsettling.
Yeah, definitely.
How one author sees the end of time, specifically this whole idea of the world being flipped completely upside down.
And it gets even more interesting because our source material is, well, it's not your typical theological text. It's a mix of biblical interpretation, personal experiences, and some pretty pointed social commentary. It makes for a really unique perspective, you know?
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so right off the bat,
Right away.
the source zeroes in on Judgment Day, not just as like the end, but as this massive turning point where everything changes.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to who holds power.
It really is all about that power dynamic shifting. Like the author says, and I'm quoting directly here, the end of the civil rights era saw people of color on the bottom beginning on top. So, it's not just an ending,
right,
but also a beginning. At least that's how he sees it.
Yeah.
A radical shift. Like
almost like those who are marginalized.
Exactly.
They become the ones in charge.
That's it. He uses this image of a great reversal, and he ties it to Acts 2 in the Bible.
Like the book of Acts.
Yeah, but he doesn't see it as just a chapter. He sees it as this whole new era. Like,
oh, wow.
Divine action and justice are about to unfold,
And there's so much vivid imagery and symbols throughout the source. We see blood moons, these specific celestial events, even exact dates like April 4th, 2015 and September 28th, 2015.
Yeah, the dates are super important to him.
It's like a whole roadmap of signs, right?
That's a good way to put it. April 4th, he sees that as the end of the civil rights era,
Right.
which connects back to that quote about power shifting. And then September 28th, that's linked to the Day of Atonement, which in his view ties into the second coming of Jesus.
Oh, wow. Okay, so we've got Judgment Day, Acts 2, this great reversal. And then there's this whole thing about being a descendant of Abraham, specifically through Joseph.
Right, and he actually claims that lineage for himself. It's really central to how he sees his own role in all this. He even connects it to Jubilee in the Old Testament,
Jubilee.
That time of forgiveness, restoration, returning to what was rightfully owned.
So it's not just family history. It's almost like...
It's a spiritual inheritance.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And it's playing out on a global scale, like a reset button for the whole world. You know what I mean?
I think so, yeah. So, like, Jubilee ties into that world turned upside down idea.
100%. It's not just possessions changing hands.
Right.
It's power structures being completely upended, cosmic scales being balanced, divine justice being served.
Okay. Now, place is important here, too.
Oh, yeah.
He focuses on two very specific locations, the temple and...
In Compton, California.
Compton.
Yeah.
Interesting combo, right?
It is.
He describes Compton as, and I quote, a border dividing the kingdom of heaven and hell.
Wow, that's intense. And the temple.
He sees it as representing this, like, divine presence.
Yeah.
You know? It's a focal point for the transformation he thinks is coming.
So, in his view, these two places, Compton and the temple, they're like battlegrounds for this end-time showdown.
Oh, wow. That is a lot to take in.
Yeah.
But it's not just this cosmic drama playing out, right?
Yeah.
It's deeply personal for him, too.
Absolutely. He brings in all sorts of stuff from his own life, like being in prison,
Really?
family events, even being part of the Million Man March.
Wow.
It's all woven into how he sees the end times.
Right. And that's what's so compelling, right? It's not just some abstract theological debate. He grounds it all in his own life, his struggles, his triumphs, and
his opinions on just about everything.
social commentary.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Hip-hop, politics, you name it, it's all in there.
There's definitely a lot to unpack there.
Sure.
But this idea of a new Black history jumps out at me.
Okay.
It keeps coming up. What does he actually mean by that?
That's a good question. It goes to the heart of his vision, I think. He's basically proposing a complete reimagining of history,
Like a rewriting.
Totally. Where the traditional power structures are flipped and a new narrative takes over.
Okay.
One specifically centered around, descendants of Abraham through Joseph.
It's like they're the protagonists of this new history.
Yeah, and he sees this new Black history as directly tied to Judgment Day.
Okay.
And the establishment of this new world order.
So if he's envisioning
a world where past injustices aren't just acknowledged,
right,
but actually rectified,
So those who have been historically marginalized,
They become the leaders.
The
shapers of this new era. It's a pretty radical vision, and it raises a lot of questions.
Definitely. Okay, I think before we go too deep into those questions, we need to go back to some of the key themes and symbols he keeps using, like this Acts 2 idea.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
It comes up constantly. Can we dig into what he really means by that?
Sure, sure. So for him, it's more than just a biblical reference,
Right.
He sees Acts 2 as a complete break from everything that came before. A brand new chapter in God's plan for humanity with, like, a whole new set of rules and possibilities.
So it's not a continuation of what's already happened,
Yeah.
but a completely new chapter, like a sequel with different rules.
Exactly. And in this sequel,
Yeah.
he believes there'll be this dramatic shift in power
Okay.
with those who've been marginalized rising to the top.
And he's very specific about who he sees rising to the top, right?
Yeah.
People of color.
Exactly. And he links it directly to Judgment Day, portraying it as this moment of reckoning where the oppressed are vindicated and those who held power, they're held accountable.
Flipping the whole world order, basically.
Flipping it right on its head. That's the core of his message.
It's a pretty radical concept, isn't it?
It is, but he's saying a profound transformation is coming, one that upends everything we think we know about power, justice, even history itself.
Now, he doesn't just talk about this great reversal in the abstract, right?
No, not at all.
He uses some pretty vivid imagery to describe this new world order.
Right. Biblical symbolism, historical events, even elements of pop culture.
Oh, wow.
All to create this, well, unconventional narrative.
For example, he talks about blood moons and celestial events, like as signs of this impending change.
Yeah.
What's the cultural and historical significance of those symbols, and how might they resonate differently with, different audiences?
Well, those are powerful images, right?
Yeah.
They're often associated with apocalyptic events, in religious texts, and they can evoke fear, awe, even excitement, depending on your beliefs and background, I guess.
Right.
And then there are the specific dates he mentions, like April 4th, 2015, and September 28th, 2015. He links them to, major events in history and in his own life.
It's fascinating how he weaves all those seemingly disparate elements together, almost like he's creating a collage to get his message across.
Exactly. It's not a typical theological text. It's more like
A personal revelation.
Yeah, exactly. Expressed through this unique blend of biblical interpretation, social commentary, and his own life experiences.
Speaking of which, he brings his own life story into this end times narrative quite a bit.
Oh, yeah, he does.
What's the significance of bringing in those personal elements into such a ground cosmic theme?
That's a good question. I think for him, it's
Yeah.
about demonstrating that these prophecies, these large-scale events, they're not just abstract ideas. They're intertwined with real people's lives,
Right.
He talks about, his experiences with incarceration, his family history, even participating in the Million Man March. It's all part of this larger tapestry he's weaving.
Yeah. And it's through those experiences that he seems to really connect with this idea of being a descendant of Abraham, particularly through the line of Joseph.
You got it. He claims this lineage himself,
Yeah.
He sees it as central to understanding his role in all of this. He believes that descendants of Joseph, they're going to play a key role in this great reversal. He even calls himself a gatekeeper for the house of Joseph.
Wow, that's powerful.
Yeah, right? Like, he sees himself as a guardian of this spiritual legacy.
Like a herald of the change that's coming.
Exactly.
And then he connects this idea of lineage back to Jubilee, right?
Oh, yeah.
He sees Jubilee as this time of restoration where those who have been dispossessed, they get back what's rightfully theirs.
Absolutely. He even uses the phrase, let bygones be bygones, emphasizing forgiveness and reconciliation.
A clean slate.
Exactly. It's a new era marked by forgiveness, where past wrongs are acknowledged, and then we move forward together.
It's a pretty powerful message of hope,
It is.
especially for those who've experienced oppression and injustice.
And it's made even more powerful by his own journey, which he presents as this testament to the power of faith and forgiveness.
Okay, and before we move on,
Yeah.
I wanted to circle back to those two specific locations he keeps mentioning, the temple in Compton, California.
Oh, yeah, those are key.
He describes Compton as a border dividing the kingdom of heaven and hell.
What do you think he means by that?
I mean, it sounds like he sees it as this.
Like a microcosm?
Like a microcosm.
Yeah, like a microcosm of the world's struggles. This place where good and evil are always clashing.
I think you're right. It's a place that's known hardship, but also resilience. Makes it a fitting symbol for the challenges and triumphs of, being human.
And the temple represents something totally different, right?
Yeah, he sees it as a place of divine presence,
Okay.
where heaven and earth meet. It's a symbol of spiritual power and a focal point for the transformation he's talking about.
He even describes it as a watchtower and a gate
Yeah.
to a new world order.
Exactly. He thinks the temple is going to play a central role in all of this, like a beacon of hope, a conduit for divine power.
Now, he doesn't just rely on biblical imagery and personal experiences.
Yeah,
Right?
not at all.
He brings in social commentary, particularly about race, politics, even hip-hop culture.
That's what makes it so unique, right?
It's like he's blending all these different elements into this, like, complex narrative.
It's thought-provoking, that's for sure.
He talks about the end of the civil rights era and the need for a new Black history. What do you think he's getting at there?
I think he's pointing to, the ongoing struggle for racial justice, the need for a more inclusive and equitable society. He wants us to re-examine history and recognize the contributions and experiences of, marginalized communities.
He also critiques political figures and ideologies, especially those he sees as promoting division.
Oh, yeah. He's not afraid to call people out.
He's definitely not pulling any punches.
Nope. And then there's his commentary on hip-hop culture.
Yeah.
Which is really interesting given his background.
You'd almost expect him to completely condemn it, given his religious beliefs, right?
Yeah, you might think so, but
he doesn't.
It's more nuanced than that. He seems to recognize the power of hip-hop,
Yeah.
Especially its ability to give voice to those who are often silenced.
Right.
But he doesn't shy away from criticizing what he sees as the negative aspects.
The glorification of violence, the materialism.
Yeah, he even uses the term garbage to describe some aspects of it.
Oh, wow.
It's strong language, for sure. But I think it highlights his belief that true power and fulfillment come from somewhere deeper, a connection to something divine.
It's like he's saying hip-hop can be a force for good, but it needs to be grounded in something more than just beats and rhymes.
Exactly. He's challenging artists, A&D fans, to look beyond the surface and engage with something deeper, with the meaning and purpose of life.
And it's all coming together to form this grand vision of a world turned upside down, right?
Absolutely. A vision of hope, restoration, and ultimately justice.
Whether you agree with his interpretation or not,
yeah,
you can't deny his passion and conviction.
You really can't.
Now, there's one thing that
What's that?
I'm curious about the role of women in all of this.
Yeah.
He mentions Shekinah, that feminine divine presence,
Right.
but doesn't really go into detail.
Yeah, it does seem that while he emphasizes male lineage, the feminine divine is present. Maybe it's something he's still working through himself,
Maybe. And what about this temple technology idea?
Oh, yeah. What is that all about?
He keeps mentioning it, but it's not always clear what he means.
It's an intriguing phrase. I think he's using it metaphorically to suggest that the temple represents something more than just a building, It's the source of knowledge, wisdom, spiritual power that can be accessed and, utilized.
Like a divine blueprint or a code.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
To help us through these times.
Exactly. And he believes this temple technology is essential for understanding Scripture, and for bringing about the transformation he envisions.
Now, I know we've covered a lot.
Well, you have.
But there's one more thing I want to touch on before we wrap up this part.
Okay.
He seems to have a very specific understanding of what it means to be holy.
Yeah, holiness is a big theme throughout.
But his definition goes beyond just rules and rituals.
Right.
It's more about
radical authenticity.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. A willingness to live in alignment with your true self and with the divine will.
And he talks about repentance too, right?
He does, but it's not that fire and brimstone kind of repentance.
Yeah.
It's more about recognizing our own shortcomings.
Yeah.
Making amends.
Turning away from what's harmful.
Exactly. Embracing a more loving, compassionate way of being.
It's very personal and introspective, isn't it?
It is. It focuses on inner transformation as a way to create a more just and harmonious world.
It's a good reminder that holiness isn't about being perfect.
Right.
It's about trying to live in alignment with our values and that divine spark within us all.
We've uncovered so much already.
Yeah, it's amazing.
I think we need to let all of this sink in a bit before we go any deeper.
I agree. It's definitely material that deserves some careful thought.
So, we'll be back soon to continue exploring this deep dive on the end times and this whole idea of a world turned upside down.
So before we paused to kind of gather our thoughts, we were discussing the author's perspective on holiness. And, one thing that really strikes me is how he's not afraid of controversy. He seems to lean right into it.
He does, doesn't he?
Yeah.
He takes on some pretty hot button issues. And he's not afraid to, name names, call people out.
Oh, yeah. He directly criticizes specific politicians, movements, anything he sees as deliberately spreading division and hatred. Like, he's really concerned about this thing he calls Christian nationalism.
Christian nationalism?
He sees it as a dangerous distortion of true Christianity,
Like it's a betrayal of the core message of love and compassion.
Exactly. And it's not just politicians. He also challenges those who claim to be pro-life, but then ignore, issues like social justice and economic inequality, the things that really impact people's lives.
Right, like true compassion has to go beyond just one issue.
Yeah, totally.
It has to address the systemic problems that, prevent people from thriving.
Right, and he brings in his own experiences here, talking about poverty, being in prison, facing racial discrimination. He uses those personal stories to highlight these systemic injustices that he sees as just woven into, like, the fabric of society,
Yeah, he even goes so far as to challenge traditional interpretations of the Bible.
Oh, he does, yeah.
He suggests that it's been used to, justify oppression, maintain the status quo.
Yeah, he calls for a complete re-examination of Scripture. Look beyond the surface, engage with what he believes are the deeper truths.
Okay.
He even suggests there are hidden messages and prophecies, especially in Revelation, that are directly relevant to what's happening right now.
So for him, the Bible isn't just some historical text.
No.
It's a living document with clues about the future embedded in it.
That's exactly it. And he sees himself as, like, someone tasked with revealing those hidden truths, preparing people for what's coming.
I bet that kind of interpretation ruffles some feathers.
Oh, for sure. He's not afraid to challenge traditional religious views, offer his own unique take on things.
Which can be unsettling for some.
Definitely. But even if you disagree with his interpretations, you can't deny his passion.
You really can't.
Okay, let's shift gears for a minute. Let's talk about the author's personal journey. He's incredibly open about his past, the struggles with addiction, crime, being incarcerated.
Yeah. It's pretty remarkable, honestly. He lays it all out there. And there's so much stigma around those topics,
Yeah, for sure.
It makes you think about the power of sharing those kinds of stories, how they can challenge our perceptions of people who've had those experiences.
Right. He doesn't try to present himself as some kind of perfect role model.
Right.
Or gloss over his mistakes. He seems to embrace his flaws, as part of what makes him human.
He even uses the word
asshole.
Yeah, asshole to describe himself.
Pretty jarring to hear in a text that's also talking about holiness and spiritual transformation. But it speaks to his humility, I think. His willingness to own his past,
Not hiding from it.
Yeah.
But showing how he's grown.
Learning from it.
Exactly. Transformation isn't about erasing the past.
Right.
It's about learning from it and growing.
Yeah. And he talks a lot about his family, too, both the good and the bad.
Yeah, his relationship with his father seems to have had a huge impact on him.
His father's a recurring figure throughout. He describes him as a righteous man, someone who instilled in him the strong sense of morality,
right,
a belief in fighting for what's right. But he also acknowledges the pain of his father's absence.
Especially during his childhood.
It seems like he's wrestled with that legacy, trying to make sense of it all. And then he connects it to this larger narrative, right? He sees his own journey with all its ups and downs as a continuation of his father's story,
Yeah, like a testament to family.
Yeah, the connections that bind us across generations. And it's not just his father.
His wife, his children.
He talks about them with such love and gratitude.
Yeah, it's clear they're a source of strength for him.
Like they represent the beauty and goodness that's still out there, amidst all the darkness.
It makes you think about the importance of those personal connections, those anchors that help us through tough times.
Couldn't agree more. And speaking of anchors, or maybe turning points,
yeah,
we can't talk about his journey without mentioning the Million Man March.
Right, that was a big one.
Seems like a real turning point.
He describes it as this powerful experience of unity.
Solidarity.
Yeah, Black men from all walks of life coming together.
Demanding justice and equality.
What do you think it was about that experience that had such a profound impact on him?
I think it was a lot of things. The scale of the event, being surrounded by so many people who shared his heritage, his desire for change. He was clearly moved by the speeches, too, especially those from leaders like Farrakhan.
Okay.
Talking about self-reliance, economic empowerment, spiritual renewal within the Black community.
Sounds like it gave him hope.
It did. Like, things could be different.
A better future was possible.
And he wanted to contribute to that future, make a difference.
Yeah. And that passion is evident in how he talks about race and racism in America.
He doesn't hold back. He shares his own experiences with discrimination and prejudice and really challenges us to confront these systemic injustices.
Okay.
He's especially critical of the, quote, prison industrial complex. He sees it as a system designed to target Black and brown communities, to keep them oppressed.
Right, and he connects that to the legacy of slavery.
Segregation.
Yeah. Argues that their effects are still being felt today.
Shaping the lives of generations.
It's a powerful reminder
Yeah.
that history isn't just something in the past.
It's alive and well.
It's shaping the present.
Exactly.
And he challenges this idea of a post-racial America.
Oh, yeah.
He argues that racism is still baked into our institutions, our culture.
It's not enough to just say racism is bad.
Right.
You have to dismantle the systems that perpetuate it.
Acknowledge how those systems continue to affect people's lives.
That's the key.
And it's interesting how he ties all of this back to his vision of the Great Reversal, this, apocalyptic event where he believes that the marginalized will rise up,
right,
usher in a new era of justice.
It's like he's saying true equality can't happen through incremental change.
It requires a total upheaval.
A complete reset.
Yeah, it's a radical idea, but it definitely makes you think.
It does. Okay, let's talk about his views on hip-hop culture.
Yeah, that's an interesting one.
You might expect him to, completely condemn it, given his background and his beliefs.
Yeah, with the secularism, the materialism, the sometimes violence.
Exactly. But he actually has a more nuanced take.
He does.
I think it shows he's open-minded, willing to engage with culture, even when it challenges his own views.
He recognizes the power of hip-hop, its ability to give a voice to those who are often silenced.
Absolutely. He even talks about how hip-hop helped him understand his own experiences growing up in a disadvantaged neighborhood.
But he's not afraid to critique the negative aspects either.
Right, the glorification of violence, materialism, misogyny.
It's like he's saying hip-hop has the potential to be a force for good.
It does.
But needs to be more conscious of its message.
Its impact.
Yeah. He's challenging both artists and fans to look deeper.
To engage with hip-hop as a form of expression, storytelling, social commentary.
And it's not just about hip-hop. He's a big advocate for education in general, especially for, young people from disadvantaged backgrounds.
He sees it as a key to empowerment, a way to break free from cycles of poverty.
To reach your full potential.
Exactly. And he connects education to his spiritual beliefs, too, which is fascinating.
Yeah, and he critiques the shortcomings of the public education system, right?
He does. Argues that it often fails students from marginalized communities.
Yeah.
He calls for more investment in education.
Especially in inner-city schools.
Yeah. And he advocates for reforms that would give everyone access to quality education.
But it's not just about formal education for him.
No.
He also emphasizes self-education.
Right. Big time. He encourages people to be lifelong learners.
Okay.
To seek knowledge from all sorts of sources, develop critical thinking skills.
So he sees education as a path to, unlocking not just individual potential,
but also collective liberation.
Which ties back into his whole vision of the Great Reversal, right?
It does. He believes that an informed and empowered citizenry is essential for creating a more just and equitable society.
Now, throughout the text, he keeps emphasizing the importance of being a seed of Abraham.
Yeah.
But it's clearly more than just a bloodline thing for him.
Yeah, it's deeper than that.
It's about inheriting a spiritual legacy, right?
Exactly, a set of values, beliefs passed down through generations.
Okay.
And he focuses on the descendants of Abraham through Joseph, believing they have a unique role to play.
Like chosen people.
Yeah, he believes they're destined to bring about a new era of justice and righteousness.
Okay.
He even calls himself a gatekeeper for the house of Joseph.
Wow.
It's like he sees himself as a guardian of this spiritual lineage.
Protecting it.
Yeah, and a herald of the coming change.
And he connects this idea of lineage back to Jubilee.
No, absolutely.
That time of forgiveness and restoration.
Right. He sees Jubilee as this moment when those who've been dispossessed, both materially and spiritually, will get back what's rightfully theirs.
And he sees the descendants of Joseph as crucial to that process.
100%. He even uses the phrase, let bygones be bygones.
Forgive you.
Reconciliation in this new era.
It's a powerful vision.
It is.
Okay, I'm curious about his views on technology.
Oh, yeah, that's an interesting one.
He seems to have this kind of complex relationship with it.
Yeah.
Acknowledging its potential, but also cautioning against its dangers.
He's not afraid to engage with the complexities of modern life.
Yeah, it's not a perspective you hear a lot in religious texts.
No, you don't. He celebrates the advancements of technology,
Okay?
marveling at its ability to connect people, spread information, all of that.
He even uses the term temple technology
Yeah, I love that phrase.
to describe this like divine wisdom, almost like a blueprint
Right.
that can be accessed through, spiritual practices.
It's like he's saying technology itself isn't good or bad.
It's all about how we use it.
Yeah, how we use it. Do we let it connect us with our higher purpose, or does it distract us?
And he definitely warns about becoming too reliant on technology.
Oh, absolutely. He says it can disconnect us from the natural world,
Our own intuition.
even the divine.
Right. And he's worried about technology being used for harmful purposes like surveillance, manipulation, even warfare.
That's right. And he worries about how it can dehumanize us, lead to isolation, alienation.
Lack of empathy.
Yeah. It's a timely message, isn't it?
It really is.
He urges us to use technology wisely, intentionally,
Mindful of the pitfalls.
and always prioritizing human connection and spiritual growth.
It's a good reminder.
It is.
Now, as we keep going with this,
Yeah.
we can't avoid talking about his claims about, his own unique abilities and experiences.
Right. The visions, communicating with God, performing miracles.
It's tricky territory.
It is.
Some people might have a hard time accepting those claims.
Especially if they're coming from a more skeptical or scientific background.
It's understandable.
It is.
But, we're not here to say whether those claims are true or false.
We're here to explore his ideas.
Try to understand his perspective.
Right. And throughout history, lots of spiritual teachers and prophets have made similar claims.
Exactly.
We might not be able to scientifically verify those experiences,
Yeah.
but they often play a huge role in shaping religious beliefs, inspiring social movements.
So I think it's important to approach them with an open mind, even if we don't fully understand or believe.
Focus on the impact those experiences had on the author.
How they shaped his worldview.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, okay.
And one thing that jumps out to me is how he emphasizes prayer.
Oh,
He doesn't see it as passive,
right.
but as a force that can change things.
Yeah, like a direct line of communication with the divine.
A way to access guidance, strength, healing,
He believes prayer can fight evil, protect you from harm.
bring about positive change.
He even suggests that certain prayers, like the Lord's Prayer, hold a special power
Yeah, like a spiritual code.
to unlock divine blessings.
It's a powerful way to think about it, right?
It is.
It goes beyond just asking for things.
Yeah.
It's about that transformative potential of connecting with something bigger than ourselves.
And he touches on his beliefs about the afterlife, too, right?
He does, although he doesn't go into a ton of detail.
But he offers glimpses into how he understands heaven and hell.
He describes heaven as this realm of peace and joy,
Yeah, reunited with loved ones.
experiencing the fullness of God's love.
And his view of hell isn't the traditional fire and brimstone.
No, not at all.
He sees it as a separation from God,
A realm of darkness and despair.
where we're consumed by our own ego.
It's a more psychological interpretation, internal state of being.
Right, and it seems like he believes our choices in this life determine our fate in the afterlife.
Yeah, choose to align ourselves with good or evil.
Love or fear.
Yeah.
And those choices shape our eternal destiny.
It's definitely thought-provoking.
It is.
Of course, not everyone's going to agree with him.
Bro.
He's definitely stirred up controversy with his interpretations and claims.
Yeah, some find his views too radical.
Too unorthodox, even heretical.
Right. And others question his claims,
Mm.
Maybe they're delusional or manipulative.
And some criticize his social commentary, saying it's divisive or inflammatory.
But it's important to remember, he's writing from a very personal perspective.
He's sharing his truth.
Yeah.
And even if we don't agree with everything he says, I think we should engage with his ideas respectfully.
Absolutely.
At the very least, his work offers a new perspective on some really big questions,
Faith, justice, the meaning of life.
Even if we disagree with his conclusions, wrestling with those questions is valuable.
It is.
Okay, before we wrap up this part,
Yeah.
what do you think is the most challenging aspect of his message? What really makes you stop and think?
I think for me, it's his, total conviction in his own interpretation. He presents his views with such certainty, like they're irrefutable truths.
That can be hard to process, yeah.
Especially if you come from a perspective that values questioning and doubt. Multiple interpretations.
Right, there's that tension between faith and critical thinking.
Yeah, how do you balance those two things? How do you hold on to your own beliefs, but stay open to other perspectives?
And what's the role of doubt in faith?
Is it the enemy or a pathway to deeper understanding?
Those are big questions.
Questions we could spend hours discussing.
And we've only just scratched the surface.
Yeah.
We'll continue our deep dive after a short break.
Okay, we're back, ready to wrap up this deep dive. It's been quite a journey, wouldn't you say?
It really has. We've gone through, well, prophecy, personal stories, social commentary.
He really paints this vivid picture, right? World turned upside down, this great reversal. Everything we think we know about power and justice just flipped.
Yeah, it's a lot to take in.
It is. As we're coming to the end here, what stuck with you the most? What feels like the most important takeaway from all of this?
That's a tough one. I think for me, it's how he connects the personal and the political, the spiritual and the social. Like, it's all intertwined for him.
Right.
He's so open about his own struggles, his triumphs, and he shows how those experiences directly connect to what's happening in society. It's not just theory.
It's his life.
Exactly.
And that makes it so much more, well, real, I guess.
Yeah, relatable.
He's not just some distant figure preaching. He's right there with us.
And even amidst all that, the pain, the suffering, he still finds hope.
Yeah, and even joy.
He doesn't shy away from the darkness, but he's always looking for the light.
It's a powerful message.
It is.
Even when things seem bleak, there's always possibility for transformation.
Redemption.
His story is a real testament to, how resilient the human spirit can be.
It is. It reminds us that even when things are tough, we have the power to choose love, forgiveness, hope.
Of course, there are still questions, right?
Ways.
Like, how do we reconcile this vision of his, this radical, great reversal with, the world we actually live in?
Yeah.
Sometimes it feels like we're moving further away from justice and equality.
It does feel that way sometimes, yeah.
So how do we make sense of that? Is he just being overly optimistic? Or is there something more to it?
Maybe his vision isn't meant to be a literal prediction. Maybe it's more of a, call to action.
A challenge to imagine something different.
To work towards that.
It's like he's saying, this is what's possible if we dare to challenge things.
Yeah, if we fight for something better.
And it starts with us, right? Our choices, our actions.
Standing up for what we believe in.
He's also challenging us to think about, the role of faith in spirituality.
Big time.
What does it mean to be holy? How do we connect with the divine?
How do we use our faith to create change?
Not for division or judgment.
Yeah.
These are questions we each have to wrestle with.
I don't think they're easy answers.
But his journey shows us that, the process of searching for those answers,
Yeah.
that's just as important.
Couldn't agree more.
And I think a key takeaway is that every story matters.
Every single one.
Every life, every experience, every voice.
All of it.
They could all contribute something meaningful.
And that even the most unconventional voices can offer real insights.
Make us see things differently.
The author's story is proof of that, right?
It is. He's walked a tough road, but he's come out of it with wisdom, compassion.
And even if we don't agree with everything he says, I think we can learn from his courage, his honesty, his belief in a better world.
Absolutely. His message, it can be challenging.
Controversial.
But it ultimately boils down to hope, resilience, the power of love.
And that's something we can all connect with.
So as we finish up this deep dive,
Yeah.
I want to leave you with this. Think about this idea of a great reversal. What does that mean for you?
What role will you play in shaping the future?
Whether it's a radical change or a more gradual shift towards justice and equality.
It's up to all of us.
Thank you for joining us on this journey. We hope it's given you some things to think about.
And maybe even inspired you to see the world a little differently.
Keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep seeking truth wherever it may lead you.